JamesAllen.com is the online destination to easily design a customized engagement ring and save up to 50% compared to traditional stores. You pick a diamond, whether it's lab-created or earth-created, James Allen has over 200,000 conflict-free stones. Then you pick your ring setting and metal. And if you need some help, they have real-time diamond consultations available, where an expert can walk you through it all. Get 25% off your order at JamesAllen.com, code podcast. That's JamesAllen.com, code podcast.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen.
This is a replay of WIBW show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by Briggs Auto Group. I am Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com, and the man across the studio is Scott Chasen. There we go, I got it. And thanks to Marlia Campbell for filling in for me last week. Scott, the Wildcats keep playing Sunday games. They have 4 weeks in a row of Sunday games. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'm just grateful it's not Sunday night Wildcat basketball, because then this might actually be an issue taping our show.
Yep, I had to be in Wichita last week, but I'm here this week. You can interact with us on social media at Facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll question and make your game predictions on our Twitter page. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast over at GoPowerCat.com. And we start things off with our 2-minute drill, and the 2-minute drill is sponsored by Vanderbilt's Your Work Boot Center.
Well, Fitz, K-State bounced back from a Wednesday loss to Marquette by beating Green Bay on Sunday as Big 12 play nears. Are the Wildcats ready for conference play?
It's hard to say right now, but they certainly have been playing pretty decent basketball. The Marquette loss stings a little bit because it was a game they probably should have won, but it was also the second straight game they played without Nigel Pack, who was in concussion protocol. And because of that, Marquise Noel stepped into the lineup at Wichita, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to get him out of the lineup, as he's flirted with a triple-triple in that time period, and again put up great numbers in Sunday's 82-64 victory over Green Bay. This team is really benefiting from their three transfer portal guys, including Ish Massoud, who didn't miss a shot on Sunday against Green Bay. It was pretty impressive. It was 4-4 from three-point range. And then, of course, Mark Smith, who has played everywhere. Actually, he's played for every college basketball program and now K-State. But these transfers have really helped K-State. Now the question becomes, are the transfers really going to push the envelope in the Big 12 for the Wildcats? This is a better team. How much better? And this really, in Big 12 play, Scott, is the only measure that counts if you're Kansas State right now. I mean, if you're Kansas or a program on the national scale right now, you measure yourself by other top 25 programs and those programs that you meet in the NCAA tournament. K-State right now is far from the NCAA tournament, so what they can accomplish in the Big 12 really is the proper measurement for where Bruce Weber's program is. And I'll say this team is the best that the program has seen in the last 3 years, but that doesn't say much. That says they are better prepared for the Big 12, but does that mean they'll actually win more games or just play more competitive losses? If you're a fan, I think you know where this falls, and Bruce Weber's program, though, is in much better shape right now than it was a year ago at this time. And Nigel Pack did return to the floor on Sunday against Green Bay and played only about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, Fitz, here's what I think the good news is. If you're a K-State fan and you are watching this basketball team, Noel can play. Nigel Pack can play. Easy Agu can play. There are a lot of guys. Kasuki, what he brought in one game earlier this year, hitting a couple of threes. You've got guys who can play, and this team hasn't developed that defensive identity that most Bruce Weber teams eventually figure out. It's not there yet. So I think there is the ability to maybe win a few games, maybe a few games you wouldn't expect come Big 12 play. But I agree with you. I think right now it's still a work in progress, although today was a nice bounce-back win.
Those three transfers have all been getting into double figures on a regular basis. But I loved Ish Massoud on the post-game interview with Wyatt Thompson. He said their defense wasn't very good, and they don't play again until next Sunday, so they'll hear about it all week. Thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, Scott, Kansas dominated Missouri, and thank you for that. In the latest edition of the Border Showdown, let's start with Christian Brown. How did he set the tone for the 102-65 victory?
Well, Fitz, he set the tone with his talking. He was amped up for this game, and look, it just took a couple of minutes. He said he tired himself out with the way he started this one. That was the first shot of the game, the three he knocked down, followed by some barking at the Missouri bench. He had the lob to David McCormick, you see. He had the and one where he's flailing his arms on the floor, just all excited. Look, Christian Brown, being a Kansas kid, he was really amped up for this game. Obviously, his brother played at Missouri, maybe didn't go down, whatever. Wasn't the most successful partnership, I guess would be the nicest way to put it. Christian Brown was angry, was fired up, was talking smack after the game. And then, of course, Chris Tehan fittingly hit the three to put Kansas over 100 points. I thought that was especially cool, given that his brother, Connor Tehan, was so paramount for KU beating Missouri in 2012. That was a game where Missouri was such a small team that Jeff Withey was not able to stay on the floor. So that opened up minutes for Tehan, who came in. He hit a few threes. I think he had 4 of them in that game back in 2012. Obviously been a while. The local kids showed up in a big way in this game because, quite frankly, they understood what it meant. And when I say local kids, I'm not even including Ochai Agbaji, who, yes, did play in Kansas City, but Bill Self said after the game he didn't really know what this rivalry meant as much as some of those other guys. Mitch Lightfoot, who fouled out in like 8 or 10 minutes, as Mitch Lightfoot occasionally does, he was amped up to play his enforcer role in this game. He understood, growing up a huge Jayhawk fan, what this game meant. Obviously, DeJuan Harris, a guy from Columbia, Missouri. Missouri's game plan was to let him shoot. He has not been a good shooter this year. He hadn't made a 3 on the season. Well, he knocks down 2 or 3, and all of a sudden that game plan is gone. And yes, Christian Brown, even Chris Tehan at the end, those guys had Kansas juiced and ready to go. And when you look at how much better Kansas is than this Missouri team, which is just flat out awful, that's what you get. You get a complete rout where Kansas, it appears like, is running it up a little bit just because they're playing so hard in a game that's already a blowout. I was extremely impressed by Kansas for taking this game seriously. I thought there was a chance that the players wouldn't necessarily know what a Kansas-Missouri rivalry means. Kansas made sure they did. They brought back some former players too, and I think that helped.
I imagine the crowd explained it pretty early in the process. That's a fun game.
That they did. Well, Fitz, over the last couple weeks on this topic, we've seen Kansas State play Wichita State, Kansas play Missouri. How important are these games to the sport of college basketball?
You know, they're great. They're fantastic. In fact, I wish we could get KU to start playing Wichita State. I wish K-State would play Missouri maybe every year at the T-Mobile Center. I would just absolutely love it. Having these regional games, and it's just so good for the fan base. It's good for the budget. I mean, you get a bigger crowd and less travel expenses that go with it when you're on the road. I just love these games because there's extra juice. There's more skin in the game here. There's just a lot more at stake. And the atmosphere when K-State played Wichita State at Intrust Bank Arena down in Wichita, it was one of the better, kind of 50-50, even though it was about 75% Wichita State crowds. It felt like a conference tournament type of game. Scott, I love these games. I absolutely love these games. And K-State goes to Nebraska next Sunday for a game against the Huskers. All of these regional games this is something that's come out of the pandemic that I think ADs are a little bit more aware of now. Trying to save every little bit of money and play one of these regional games instead of flying all the way across the country to play a non-conference basketball game just makes so much better sense, and it means more to the fans, and as it turns out, as we've seen in both these games, the players.
Yeah, well, Fitz, I couldn't agree more. And look, there were a lot of people who didn't want Kansas to play Missouri again. I'll use that as the example because it covered Kansas. And look, you understood maybe why at the beginning when Missouri left the Big 12, and there were thoughts of instability, what's going to happen to the conference. Certainly Bill Self was against playing this game. But there comes a point where you see that it can bring value even to a school like Kansas. I hear Kansas fans say, well, there's no benefit to Kansas playing this game. Did you see the crowd? Did you see the energy from the fan base? Do you see how much passion people bring to this? That's not to say they wouldn't bring passion to any other game. That's not to say Missouri's the best team on Kansas's schedule, but it really did seem to reinvigorate this fan base. And Fitz, as you mentioned, if you were just watching the game and saw how the crowd looked moments before tip-off, people really cared about this one, and the KU players, just like you said, they wanted to win too.
I absolutely love it. I wish we'd had more games like this. I wish K-State played UMKC every year. Just kind of keep it regional. And Omaha is who they play every year. It's just not the same. Now, a quick look at your poll question results. The poll questions are brought to you by Midland Exteriors. Love the home you live in. Call today for a free estimate.
Well, last week's question was, how do you expect Cincinnati to perform in the college football playoff? Of course, Cincinnati will first play Alabama in the first round on New Year's Eve. A blowout loss in the semifinal round to Alabama, that was 26%. Most people think a close loss in the semifinal round again to Alabama, that's 42%. Loss in the college football championship game, 26%. And last place, only 6% of people think Cincinnati is going to win the college football championship.
Man, just not enough faith in the Bearcats. I think it's going to be E, Alabama will not show up in fear. You think that's possible?
It'd be a tough one.
Okay, this week's question is this. Should KU Hoops of Missouri play at least once every year? I say yes. B says no. Vote on our Twitter page at The Drive 13.
Well, they certainly will for the next 5 at least, and I agree. I hope it continues from there. Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Is your January looking dry? Get some lotion. Get a humidifier. And better yet, get Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices across local stores to get the best price on a huge selection of drinks perfect for dry January. Every single time. Non-alcoholic wines? Have a look. Ready-made mocktails? Grab a straw and order them up. Beer without the alcohol? Yep, take your pick. You can find all of them here, in the app. In that phone that's in your hand. Could it be any simpler? Nope, not a chance. So shop for great deals on all your dry January beverages or other drinks and get them delivered to your door or blanket fort, maybe. Download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations. And don't forget to lotion up your elbows. They're looking a little dry.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. And the 2-minute drill sponsored by Vanderbilt's Your Work Boot Center.
Well, Fitz, K-State is preparing for a Texas Bowl matchup with LSU, with Colin Klein serving as interim offensive coordinator. Is Klein the leader for duties next season at that position?
You know, this is really an intriguing thing. Is some of the candidates we thought might emerge really haven't popped up for Chris Kleiman. And I think in reality right now, he's in such a recruiting mode and bowl preparation mode that he's just done interim internal promotions to fill his 2 vacancies, moving up some analysts on the staff to help actually coach the team and go out on the recruiting trail. It's funny, Scott, in the Texas Bowl press conference, which was last Sunday, as we were going down to Wichita, we had to pull over and hop on a Zoom call. It was very interesting. Chris Kleiman was very specific in saying Colin knows this game isn't make or break in terms of what he believes he could do as an offensive coordinator. So one, I mean, it made very clear that he's a candidate. I mean, Chris Kleiman sees him as a candidate for this. But I would say this game has everything to do with it, because if Kansas State goes down to Houston and hangs a bunch of points on LSU, how are you going to not promote Colin Klein? And if the opposite is true, they go down to Houston and absolutely stink it up on offense, how are you going to promote him? So I think it does have an impact. But I also think a course of action Chris Kleiman might go with is to hire a veteran who either will come in as an offensive coordinator, and I'm thinking of Matt Wells, the former Texas Tech coach, who's good friends with Kleiman. Someone like him comes in knowing darn well he'll be there a year or 2, but part of his job is to prepare Colin. Or he actually makes Colin the offensive coordinator and brings in someone with a little more experience who maybe has been an offensive coordinator to be the number 2, the co-offensive coordinator, to help guide Colin. Because the reason this is so important for K-State is Chris Kleiman's a defensive coach. So he pretty much turns his offense over to his offensive coordinator, just like Bill Snyder did with defense. So he's got to get this right, because this person really does run half of the team that takes the field on Saturdays for K-State.
Well, Fitz, I think you and I would both agree that coordinator and assistant positions, it almost seems like they're more important now, or maybe that importance is being realized. You get the right guy in there, it can really transform something. It will be very interesting to see what they do with that.
And it's so difficult to get it right when you hire a position coach. You got to get someone who's good at it, someone who the players will respond to, and someone who can recruit also. And it's just a lot of moving pieces, so you really need to study everything very closely. Well, Scott, you talked about the local talent to start off the show. Did you have any other big takeaways from Saturday's KU-Mizzou game?
I actually did, Fitz, and I kind of mentioned it when I talked about maybe it felt like Kansas was running up the score a little bit, and it'd be like, well, why? It's because Kansas played a rotation. I see you saying, yes, in favor of that. Look, Kansas played a rotation of like 7 guys until the final 10 minutes of the game. Yeah, Jalen Coleman-Lands, he was sort of the 8th, but even then, I don't know how many minutes he would have got if that game was closer. Bill Self said after this one, he kind of coached this game like he plans to coach when this team goes into Big 12 play, and that meant whittling that rotation down in a hurry. Kansas has been able to play 10 deep, 11 deep. Kansas has been able to go into the bench a whole bunch of times this year. You've seen freshmen like KJ Adams and Zach Clements get minutes. You've seen Jalen Coleman-Lands play more. Bobby Pettiford, when he was healthy, he was playing more. Joseph Yesufu, he's played a bunch at times and at others not so much. There are a lot of names you can throw out, but this was the first game this year that Bill Self kind of deemed important. Maybe he'd say Michigan State, but Kansas sort of controlled that game the whole time. It was early in the season. Bill Self didn't really have a handle on the rotation. This was the first game that Bill Self really said, I'm going to coach this like it's the NCAA tournament. And for that rotation, that deep KU team, one of the deepest they've ever had, man, that tightened up quickly. So what you have now, you have your starting 5. You have Remy Martin, Dwan Harris, Christian Brown, Ochai Agbaji, David McCormick. You've got Mitch Lightfoot coming off the bench, who, Bill Self trusts, and you've got Jalen Wilson, who Bill Self trusts because of what he did last year. Okay, everyone else on the team, you're now fighting for minutes. You're fighting to not have a bigger role. You're fighting to have a role, and that's probably Jalen Coleman-Lands as that 8th guy. I don't know who would be the 9th. Maybe Bobby Pettiford when he returns, maybe someone else. But I think you've seen Bill Self look at this and say, especially he's been critical of himself for subbing too much. And, you could have viewed that as a motivational tactic. Bill Self saying, you guys better play better, you're going to lose minutes. No, I think he's taken it seriously. I think he's looked at it and said, KU has played well, then he's subbed, it hasn't gone as well. Okay, I'm just going to shorten that rotation up. And you really saw that in the Missouri game. I thought it was interesting.
Very good. Now we step out of bounds. Out of Bounds is brought to you by Copeland Insurance Agency, part of your community for more than 60 years.
Well, Fitz, you were off for last week's show, so let's give you a chance to chime in here. College football playoff will kick off on New Year's Eve. How excited are you for Cincinnati versus Alabama and Michigan versus Georgia?
I am really fired up, and I'm really fired up to see how Cincinnati measures up. And it's almost unfair to the Bearcats that they're going to be used as the measuring stick for all future non-Power 5 schools that might get in, or they might not get in if Cincinnati gets blown out. It's really not fair to the Bearcats, but I guess my biggest takeaway is when Kirk Herbstreit came on and absolutely called out on Twitter that all the fans that have been complaining about the non-Power 5 institutions not getting into the playoff and calling it a conspiracy theory. I didn't understand that. And let's be honest here. Oklahoma State wins its game, Scott. Mm-hmm. They win the Big 12 title. Do you think the committee's not going to put Oklahoma State in over Cincinnati, even if it's not right, even if it's not fair, have a Power 5 champion left out with a one-loss record? No, they're going to put them in. So I'm happy about it, and this is a good grouping here. But it could have gone south very quickly if a few things had changed in the games leading up to the playoff selection.
Yeah, let's get real about this. I mean, Clemson, if Clemson weren't down and having a terrible year, Clemson would have been in. Notre Dame, if Notre Dame's early loss had been to any team but Cincinnati, who just happened to years in advance schedule what would be a top 5 Notre Dame team. I mean, it took a whole bunch of things coming together. I'm very happy it did happen, but yes, I agree with you. It's still next to impossible, and everything has to go right in one way, wrong in another for a team like Cincinnati to make the playoff. But you know what? They did, so let's see how they do.
It's good for the future Big 12, too. Mm-hmm. Now let's hear from the fans, and our fan question is sponsored by Meadowlark, supporting people in living their best lives. And this one came in at the last second, Scott. It's from a guy named Tim F. I don't know why I put his initial in there, in Manhattan. Sounds
Might be
sketchy.
in Topeka.
He sounds sketchy. Scott, word on the street, and I heard it on the street, is you were able to attend the Chiefs' beat down of the Raiders, as Aaron, our producer, was too. I didn't get tickets because people don't like me. How fun was that? Because that was awesome to watch.
Fitz, it was a party, and it was a party from the first play of the game. I mean, maybe it wasn't the first play when the Raiders fumbled and it was scooped up, returned for a touchdown. How about the ensuing kickoff when the guy bats the ball out of bounds, and I think the Raiders get a first down by penalty, and even that doesn't put them to the 25, and then they have to punt, and the Chiefs go up big. That was as impressive and complete a performance I've seen from the Chiefs in a while, probably this year. Really impressive, really fun. I thought it was a great win.
Yep, they got up 35-0 and cruised 35-0 in the second quarter. Note to the Raiders in the future, you may not want to dance around on the center midfield logo before the game. It doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, that team is in a tailspin too. Yeah. Well, remember to ask us your questions on our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we will look at our predictions here on The Drive.
The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/247 and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Must be 21 plus and present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, permitted parishes only, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, or Wyoming. FanDuel is offering online sports wagering in Kansas under an agreement with Kansas Star Casino, LLC. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342 in Arizona, 1-888-789-7777, or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana, 1-800-522-4700, or visit ksgamblinghelp.com in Kansas, 1-877-770-STOP in Louisiana. Visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia, or call 1-800-522-4700 in Wyoming. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York, or visit oasas.ny.gov/gambling. Standard text messaging rates apply. Sports betting is void in Georgia, Hawaii, Utah, and other states where prohibited.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show, and it's time to look at our predictions. Remember to make your weekly predictions on our Twitter page at The Drive 13. Here are last week's results. The viewers went 2-1, Scott went 2-1, and I entrusted my picks to my sub, Marlia, and she went 1-2.
I think it's very interesting that you're putting all the blame on her. I think
it's all her fault.
Too.
I mean, it feels like she cost me 10 games in the standings.
I'll let her know.
And now, here are this week's picks. And we start with Kansas. Now, of course, this is all college basketball. Minus 24.5 against a guy named Stephen F. Austin. You have.
Fitz, I'll take Kansas, but boy, is that a lot of points.
That's a lot of points. Yeah. I will take this fella named Stephen F. Austin, thinking they will lose by fewer than 25 points. Ouch.
Well, next, Fitz, K-State. We'll make them another pick 'em at Nebraska. I will roll with the former Big 12 over the current Big 12. Who you got in this one?
This is a bad line. I love it because it's in my favor. I'll take K-State. K-State should roll. Nebraska's really struggling. I can't explain why. They're not very good at hiring coaches all of a sudden up there. I don't know what's going on. Here's our last game of the week. It's Gonzaga minus 14.5 versus the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I will stick with the Big 12 and take Tech.
I will go with Gonzaga, although Gonzaga already has a couple of losses this year, so they've been kind of interesting in this one.
Might want to fire that Mark Few guy. Again, make your picks on our Twitter page at TheDrive13. Now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One. Buy local for a strong local community. And we start with Mr. Scott Chasen.
Well, Fitz, just a quick note on Emmett Jones, the Kansas wide receivers coach, who is now at Texas Tech. Emmett Jones obviously helped Kansas recruiting. He was great for player development, but I think it's really interesting now as Kansas turns its efforts locally, maybe a little bit less into Texas. I actually think Kansas could be losing a very talented, very good assistant, but it could also possibly be a good thing for the program.
Man, can we get him out of the Big 12? He's really good at recruiting. Hey, I'm going to share a little personal news with you today. As many of you know, I have stage 4 prostate cancer, and I've been battling this for more than 3 years. In fact, to the week, my radiation ended 3 years ago. And because of that, and no sign of active cancer, I've been declared in remission, which is always a good word to hear and say. However, anyone who's dealt with cancer knows it's just kind of a milestone that cancer can rear its ugly head. But I appreciate so much everyone's support through these last 3-4 years. It's been quite the process. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.